Right, let's try that again. Hi guys, it is me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to qualifying day here in Brazil and the qualifying watch along for the 2023 Sao Paulo Grand Prix. If you guys did tune in to the very, what do you call it, very quick qualifying watch along stream I did a few minutes ago, maybe wondering why did that stream end so quickly? It's because I had a power cut, which came out of nowhere. Something tripped the electrics. I have no idea what. Well, no idea exactly officially, but I have a general idea as to what it was. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that will not happen again. But we have got just over an hour and 20 minutes to go until qualifying. And as I was saying, I am very excited for qualifying today because the lap here, not very long, plus the lap time difference, the gaps between the cars normally is pretty small around here, and it can make for a very exciting qualifying session here in Brazil. So I am excited for today, and I think we will get a good session. We've got a great fight for pole position, I think, between Ferrari and Red Bull. Then after that, you've got maybe Mercedes not too far away. Williams, I think, will be very competitive. Haas in qualifying, I think, will be very competitive. Obviously, McLaren, we'll see how they do in quali as well. So I think this could be a really mixed up, exciting qualifying session. And yeah, let's hope for that. But because my stream did very abruptly end, I need to quickly set up the poll I had in the chat originally for the other stream event. So let me just quickly do that now before I move on to this preview for the for what do you call it, for the qualifying session. So who do you think will take pole position at the 2023 Sao Paulo Grand Prix? And I'll just put the options back in that I had originally before. Max Verstappen, of course, one of them. Lewis Hamilton, I'll put in there as well. And then the other options will be Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. But yeah, if you did tune into the stream that, again, was very abrupt, then apologies about it cutting off. But thankfully, we're back pretty quickly. So there you go. There is the poll. Let me know for the next hour and a half or more. Really, that poll is going to be running until the start of Q3, which, of course, won't be for another, what, probably a couple hours. Yeah, let me know with that poll, who do you think will take pole position out of Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, and Hamilton? And I'll get onto the results right before we get into Q3. But I hope you guys are well, no matter what is going on in your part of the world, what time zone you're in, you know, whether it's, middle of the night or late at night, no matter, what time or what's going on in your part of the world. I hope you're all having as best a time as possible, given whatever circumstances you are going through. And yeah, the plan for today's stream is, we're going to be doing a build up to qualifying for the next hour and 20 minutes, basically. Then getting into the session, doing the normal watch along and coverage of the session. And then I'll be doing a probably 20 to 30 minute reaction to qualifying afterwards. So plenty coming up in the next about, 3 hours here on stream. But as I said in my previous very quick stream, there was a practice session earlier today in Brazil. The only practice session that will be happening during the weekend. Wasn't very representative, I have to say. People weren't really pushing that hard. We did get a few soft tyre runs towards the end, but nothing really that exciting. And I don't think we really saw anything in practice one that would make us feel any different about what's going to happen going into qualifying than we thought maybe yesterday going into the actual race weekend. So let me just hide this timer and get into the results of first practice. So Ferrari ended up with a 1-2. Carlos Sainz quickest from Charles Leclerc second. George Russell third. Russell did his best time on the medium compound with Sainz and Leclerc on the soft. So if they were running very similar fuel loads, then that is a good lap time for Russell. But again, we have no idea what the programs were for the first practice session. So we can't, sit here and say that, yeah, Mercedes have definitely got the pace to be on pole position or anything. So yeah, Russell ended up third, Hulkenberg fourth, Albon fifth, Stroll sixth, Gasly seventh, Zhou eighth, Sargent ninth, and Kevin Magnussen in 10th. And then the rest of the order, Fernando Alonso 11th, Lewis Hamilton 12th, Yuki Tsunoda 13th, Daniel Ricciardo 14th, Esteban Ocon 15th, Max Verstappen down in 16th. He did his best time on the hard compound tyre. Then Bottas 17th, Perez 18th, and the two McLarens, Norris and Piastri, at the very back. So yeah, there's nothing really to take from the practice session. The only notable thing, and hold on, no, that's the wrong thing I went on to, not the championship standings. I want to go back to the top 10 we had in practice one. The only notable thing is that the two Williamses and the two Haases are in the top 10. Now, that's not going to happen in qualifying if, obviously, both Red Bulls and both McLarens get through to Q3, which you would have to expect they will. But it is interesting to note that it is already like that. I mean, that was my prediction really going into qualifying, is that out of the midfield teams, Williams and Haas would be the two most competitive. So it is interesting to see that, already developed. But again, in terms of fuel loads, engine modes, who was pushing harder than whoever else, it's impossible to say really. And we'll know more, of course, once we get into qualifying. But yeah, because of those results not being very representative at all, let me now get into what I think will happen in qualifying as we start this build-up, just so you guys know where my head is at. So we'll go into my top 10 qualifying prediction. I think Ferrari will take pole position with Charles Leclerc on pole. Max Verstappen will be very close to Leclerc, but I think he will end up second. Carlos Sainz, I'm going third. Gotta say, though, I wouldn't be necessarily massively surprised if Ferrari locked out the front row, because I think they've definitely got the pace to do that. Sergio Perez, I think, will end up in fourth, with Hamilton fifth, Russell sixth, Norris seventh, Albon eighth, Piastri ninth, and Nico Hulkenberg in P10. That's how I think things will play out for the top 10 today. And yeah, as we saw in practice, Albon and Hulkenberg doing pretty well so far. So maybe that's already showcasing itself in terms of those two teams already having good speed. But let's go back to here and let me get the timer back on screen, as we have got how long have we got to go? We've got, I think, an hour and 14 minutes to go until qualifying starts. So there you go. So, yeah, as I go through the teams, guys, let me know in the live chat, how do you think the teams are going to do in qualifying today? How do you think, the fight for pole position will play out? Who do you think is in the fight for pole position? Do you think it is Ferrari and Red Bull, or just Red Bull, or do you think Mercedes are in there? Let me know in the chat. And again, in general, let me know for all the teams how you think they'll all get on. But let's get into the teams, and I will start with Red Bull Racing, of course, coming out of the Mexico City Grand Prix. Another win, but it wasn't the easiest weekend. And Ferrari, in qualifying terms as of late, do look very competitive compared to Red Bull. So I think this is going to be a difficult session for Red Bull. If they're going to get pole, it's going to be some incredible lap, I think, from Max Verstappen. He'll have to show today why he's the best driver in the world if he is going to get pole position. Sergio Perez, of course, coming here, not very confident. Let's see what he can do. I think because Red Bull are going to be pretty competitive here, and this track, even though it's a great track, it's not necessarily the most difficult circuit in the world. I think Perez will have a solid weekend. Fourth in qualifying, fourth in the race. I think that is about what he will do this weekend and in this qualifying session. As long as he is best of the rest after his teammate and the two Ferraris, then I don't think really we can complain about, his qualifying effort too much, unless he's a massive amount of lap time away, which I don't expect to happen because this track, again, not the most difficult, but also the lap time difference doesn't tend to be massive between teammates around this track. So, yeah, they'll be super competitive, Red Bull, but ultimately, I don't think they've got the best car for qualifying. For the race, of course, on Sunday, we know they'll be super strong, but I think for qualifying here, I think they're looking probably second best, but it is going to be very, very close. For Mercedes-Benz, encouraging lap from Russell early in practice, but again, whether that is a true indication as to how quick Mercedes are, we're not going to know until qualifying. But I think Mercedes, even if they end up being as quick as I think they'll be, that's not necessarily that bad for them if they do end up on the third row of the grid and only 3 to 5 tenths of a second away from pole. That's not that bad at all. You have to remember, Mercedes a few months ago were way, way off in terms of lap time. So that would be a good amount of progression and a very good step forward if Mercedes were, only that far away from pole position. So, yeah, I think definitely third fastest team. They've got more straight line speed than McLaren. Their car more aerodynamically efficient when it comes to its straight line speed than the McLaren. And I think most importantly, have enough downforce in the middle sector to avoid being outqualified by, let's say, a Williams or a Haas. So that's why I've gone for a third row lockout for the Mercedes team. And the reason in the middle sector I don't think McLaren will necessarily be that much quicker than Mercedes is because I don't think the middle sector for McLaren really suits them that much more than Mercedes. So, yeah, I think Mercedes will have a decent weekend. And, yeah, 5th and 6th in qualifying, I think that would be not pretty good, but pretty decent. And would set them up, if they've got a very quick race car, that'd set them up decently well for Sunday's race. Ferrari. Let's go on to them. Yeah, I think they are the very slight favourites to take pole position today. I just think their car and the characteristics of their car around this track is a very, very good combination. And that's why I think ultimately they will, even though it will be close, I think they will take pole position over Red Bull. Leclerc's looked a lot stronger in the last few races, especially in qualifying. Of course, Leclerc has been on pole for the last 2 races this season. So we have to remember the form Leclerc is in. Carlos Sainz still in decent form as well. And Ferrari in much better form in the second half of the season than they were earlier in 2023. So I've got a good feeling about Ferrari for this session. I think at least first and third is what they will get. Again, I wouldn't be massively surprised if they locked out the front row, even though they're not going to be locking it out by, a comfortable margin or anything like that. But I think pole position definitely is possible today. And you've got to think as well with Ferrari, this is the final part, this Grand Prix of a triple header. They've been on pole for the first 2 parts. The track in Austin and the track in Mexico theoretically should suit their car a lot less than this one. So if they can get pole position there, then really, what can stop them here? I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's Ferrari, so maybe they'll stop themselves. They have obviously done plenty of that in the last, few years, but I just don't see how they're not going to be at least very close to pole position, if not on pole position. I think it's very likely that they will end up on pole, especially, again, with the 2 drivers in such good form. So watch out for Ferrari if you're a Ferrari fan. I think you definitely should be hopeful for this weekend because qualifying, I think you've got the car to be right at the top. And even for the race on Sunday, I don't think Ferrari are going to be too bad. This could be, this weekend, the second and final win of Ferrari's season. It really could. Yeah, Ferrari, I think, will be very good today. McLaren, though, bit of the opposite, I would say. Yeah, McLaren, they just don't have a car that's good for this sort of circuit. Obviously, we know their car in the corners, it's good. And even in slow corners, it's not a terrible car. It's just not as strong as it is in the high-speed corners. But this track just doesn't have really that much of what McLaren like. Again, in the middle sector, there's too many slow corners. A couple of the high-speed corners are not really corners where you can make a gigantic difference in lap time. And of course, the first and final sector, you are just flat out. And McLaren's car is still one of the slowest in a straight line. So it is going to be a tricky weekend. They're going to have to rely, really, I think, McLaren, on the two drivers being really quick in qualifying and getting the absolute most out of the car to make sure they aren't starting the race on Sunday too far back on the grid and they're not too much in, say, the midfield. Because, I mean, if they're two drivers, they don't have maybe quite their best qualifying, they could end up in the back end of the top 10 and maybe even one car knocked out in Q2. It is possible if one of their drivers doesn't quite get qualifying right today. Especially, I'm looking, at Oscar Piastri, man on screen. Obviously, he's never raced it before, and obviously did the practice one session earlier, but McLaren were not pushing at all. So who knows, really, how Piastri is going to do under the pressure in qualifying. But I think they'll get both cars into the top 10. I think the two drivers are good enough to drag the car in to the top 10, but I don't think they're going to get a result that's really that good. 7th and 9th is what I've predicted. I could easily see them, though, ending up 8th and 9th or 8th and 10th. I think they're definitely going to be back end, more so towards the back end of the top 10. But if they can, well, hold on, let me rephrase that. If we do get some rain for qualifying, which is possible, there is some rain in the area, and rain, there is a decent chance of that for this qualifying session. If it does come at the right time, then I think McLaren are in business. I think you'll see them a lot stronger and probably qualifying inside the top 5 on the grid. But if it doesn't rain and it stays dry, then yeah, I think a top 6 in qualifying would be a good result for them, but not really a result that you would go into this session expecting, I think, from the McLaren team. So yeah, if you're a McLaren fan, just temper your expectations, because I don't think really we're going to see that good of a session from McLaren. It's going to be pretty mediocre to what we've had a lot of times in the last, say, 3 months or so. And now, let's go into the midfield teams. And yes, Aston Martin, I'm afraid, must be counted as a midfield team. They obviously were so slow in Mexico. In Texas, they had a horrible weekend. And they just continue to go backwards. But also, this track, even if we came to this track in the early part of the season when they were good, this track is not a good track for them. Obviously, the first and the final sector is basically flat out. They have one of the slowest cars in a straight line. Aerodynamically, it's not efficient in a straight line, like, say, the Red Bull is. And in the middle sector, yeah, they'll be stronger, but not that much stronger, I don't think. And I think going into this session, there is definitely a chance that both Aston Martins will be knocked out in Q1 and maybe even end up as the slowest team in qualifying. I don't think that'll be quite the case in the race, but I think we could definitely see that today. So, yeah, I don't think, no matter how well the drivers perform, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference, because I don't think, as a driver, you can make a massive difference around this circuit compared to, Monaco, Suzuka, Silverstone, places like that. I don't think this track is quite as I don't think as a driver you can be as effective around a track like this as you can at others. So I think for Alonso and Stroll, they've just got to go into qualifying and hope for the best, because I don't think there's really any hope for them going into this qualifying session. The best I can see is Alonso probably getting into Q2 and ending up in like 13th, 14th place. But I would be very surprised in a dry qualifying session here if they ended up in the top 10. Be very, very surprised by that. If it does rain, though, then game on. I think they can definitely get into the top 10 then. I think Alonso will be definitely a driver to watch out for in that case. But, yeah, with it being dry, most likely, it's difficult to see Aston Martin having any sort of a session that ends up being noteworthy, really. And the same, really, you could argue will go for Alpine, because, of course, their straight line speed is pretty poor as well. They do have the weakest power unit on the grid. They believe, Alpine, that they're about 20, maybe even 30 horsepower down on, say, the Ferrari power unit, which is quite a bit of a difference, considering as well that the development of these power units is frozen until 2026. So there's nothing, of course, they can do about it, unless all the other teams allow them to, get their power unit up to standard. But I don't think that is going to happen. But yeah, Alpine, I think, might be a bit stronger than Aston Martin. The reason I say that is because in the middle sector, I think Alpine should have a pretty decent car through there. That's why I think Alpine will probably be ahead of Aston Martin, is purely because of that middle sector. So they're not going to be god-awful. I think, even though there is definitely a likely chance that Alpine have a car eliminated in Q1, I think they have a bit more of a brighter prospects going into this session than, say, Aston Martin do. So yeah, I think the best I can see is maybe Pierre Gasly ending up 12th, 13th on the grid if he really pulls out a special lap. And then with Esteban Ocon, who I do expect to be the slower Alpine driver. Pierre Gasly, by the way, has outqualified Esteban Ocon. I think, is it 10-2 in the last 12 races or something? Gasly has been very good in the second half of this season. Ocon, yeah, wouldn't be surprised if he was knocked out in Q1. Maybe if he gets through to Q2, yeah, he'll make it in, I don't know, 15th or 14th place. But Alpine, I do think, will be stronger than Aston Martin, but not by that much, I must say. But, right. Let's go on to the final, how many more teams? Final 4 teams we have got here. So Williams, I think, will be the strongest team from the midfield. And this man on screen, Alexander Albon, watch out for him, because I think he is going to be possibly a massive surprise today. I think he will definitely make Q3, because, I mean, with the form he's in, plus how good the car is, I just don't see how he wouldn't make Q3. But I think he's got a legitimate chance of being on the third row of the grid. I think that's definitely possible for Alexander Albon. It's going to be very close, though, between probably the second Mercedes of George Russell, the 2 McLarens, and maybe even if the Haas is really strong in qualifying in the hands of Nico Hulkenberg, maybe he'll be in there fighting for those positions as well. But yeah, I think Albon will be very strong today, and I've gone for 8th in qualifying, which would be a great position for the race. He would definitely be able to secure points from there if he ended up in at least that position. But as I said, I think a top 6 is absolutely possible for Albon. Logan Sargent, of course, is his first time racing here. What can he do? Well, with the Williams car being pretty strong here, really Logan needs to be in at least Q2. If he's eliminated in Q1, then I'm afraid that's a terrible performance. That should not be happening. The Williams car is not, one of the worst cars this weekend. So he cannot have the excuse of being knocked out in Q1 at all. He needs to be really Logan in, say, 13th place, something like that. Maybe P12, you could argue. The thing is, though, whether he should make it into Q3, it really depends on how well Albon does, if Albon does get into Q3. So, for example, if Alex qualifies in 6th and, does his lap time and is, let's say, 3 to 4 tenths of a second ahead of 10th place, then really Logan needs to be getting into Q3 with him. But if Albon qualifies 8th or 9th and he barely gets in to Q3, then I think you could then excuse Logan qualifying, say, in 12th place and only maybe a 10th or so away from his teammate. So we'll see how he does, but I'm just hoping at least he can get into Q2. Because we have seen in the last couple races, he was very strong in the races. But the problem is, he just cannot qualify well enough. And he's way, way too slow on a qualifying lap. Reminds me a bit of Mick Schumacher last year, where Mick would be way too low down on the grid, have pretty good pace in the race for the car he was driving, but he would be too low on the grid to really get any sort of good result out of the race. So I'm hoping, again, for Logan, he can get into Q2 and get his weekend off to a good start. But watch out for Williams. They are definitely going to be, I think, the strongest midfield team. AlphaTauri, very strong race in Mexico. Not going to be as good here, unfortunately, because this track just doesn't suit the characteristics of their car. The tracks they like are higher aero circuits, and this just isn't really one of them. But I think they will still be pretty decent. I think they'll probably have both cars getting through to Q2. It will be very close, though, as it usually is in qualifying, in the fight to get through to the second part of qualifying. And then, yeah, I don't think they'll make Q3 because I think at the end of the day, they just don't have the straight line speed with this AlphaTauri to get into Q3. But one thing I am interested to see is who ends up ahead on the grid, Tsunoda or Ricciardo, because Ricciardo, of course, amazing race in Mexico. Tsunoda's pace in Mexico was actually in the race pretty good until he turned in on Oscar Piastri. And I'm just wondering whether from Tsunoda we'll see a bit of a response and he'll, really come back at Ricciardo after Ricciardo's amazing result in Mexico that has now put the team 2 places higher in the championship. So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. But I don't think ultimately AlphaTauri have a car quick enough to get into Q3. I just don't think that is possible. It is possible, a top 10, I think, for the race. But, yeah, they need, I think, like a 12th, 13th on the grid, really, to set themselves up for a point-scoring finish for Sunday. The final couple teams, Alfa Romeo, don't count them out. I think Valtteri Bottas especially, I think will be one of the dark horses here for qualifying. Let me go on to Valtteri Bottas. Yeah, I think he will be one of the dark horses here in qualifying. He has been consistently strong here in his F1 career. He was on pole position here before for Mercedes. He, even last year for Alfa Romeo, had a very strong result and was running in, I think, at one point in 5th place in the Alfa Romeo. And he's had, a few podiums here. Has he had a few podiums here? Let me think. Well, he's had a couple, I think, at least. He may have had one more, I don't know. But point is, consistently, he is pretty competitive here in Brazil. So watch out for Valtteri Bottas. I do have a good feeling about him. And I think if there is any surprises in the top 10, I think he could be definitely one of them this weekend. So, yeah, Valtteri Bottas, watch out for him. Alfa Romeo should have a decent weekend overall because they have the Ferrari power unit. They do have a bit of a draggier car, though, than the Haas car, and that does affect them at times. Their car, the Alfa Romeo car, not very aerodynamically efficient with its slipperiness through the air. So I think that might just about cost them today, but I still think they'll be pretty strong. And then finally, the Haas F1 team, of course, had a disastrous race in Mexico. Nico Hulkenberg, I think, will make the top 10 because the Haas car is very good at these low downforce circuits or lower downforce circuits. Hulkenberg as well has a brilliant history around here. Of course, his first and I think only pole position of his F1 career came here in Brazil 13 years ago. 11 years ago, he was fighting for the race win in a Force India. And then many years after that was a regular point scorer here in Brazil. So watch out for Nico Hulkenberg because he's got plenty of experience at this track. And in qualifying in 2023 has been one of the best, also consistent performers in qualifying in 2023. So watch out for Hulkenberg. Kevin Magnussen, obviously, this time last year took pole position for the sprint race it was that weekend because qualifying last year, of course, decided the grid for the sprint race, and then the sprint race decided the grid for the actual race on a Sunday. But maybe he can tap into some of that form from last year and deliver a much stronger qualifying effort. But let me hide the timer quickly again and just show once again this is my predicted top 10 for qualifying. I think it will be Leclerc on pole, Verstappen second, Sainz third, Perez fourth, Hamilton fifth, Russell sixth, Norris seventh, Albon eighth, Piastri ninth, and Hulkenberg in 10th. Let me know, guys, in the live chat, do you agree or disagree with my prediction? And in the poll running at the top of the live chat, out of the 4 options I've given you, who do you think will take pole position for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix of 2023? Let me know for the next hour and a half, and I'll get to those results later on, right before we get into Q3. Just want to update you guys, though, as to the schedule for the rest of the weekend here on the channel covering the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Tomorrow night, I will be live Saturday night for the sprint race watch-along in Sao Paulo. I'll go live at 5 p.m. UK time. That's an hour and a half before the sprint begins. Build up to the sprint, then do the watch-along for it and a reaction. And then on Sunday, I'll be live 2 hours before the race starts at 3 p.m. UK time for the race preview, then the race watch-along, and then a race reaction. And then on Monday night, I will be live at 7 p.m. UK time for a review, really, of the last 3 races and what has happened, really, news-wise, in the last couple weeks. So, let me just get the timer back on the screen. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because we do, obviously, do plenty of streams, videos, and we are constantly covering what's going on, obviously, in Formula 1. So if you want to keep up to date with everything going on in Formula 1, this is a great place to be. So make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell. And for everybody watching right now, make sure to smash the like button. We're on 16 likes. Let's try and get up to, say, 25 plus in the next, say, 30 minutes or so. But once again, apologies if earlier, very briefly, you were watching the, what do you call it? If you were watching the stream earlier and it cut off, it was just a power trip inside my house, which thankfully has been quickly solved. And yeah, make sure now, guys, now I've done basically my build-up, let me know in the chat what you think is going to happen. If everybody watching, if you want to as well, ask any F1 related questions, then make sure for the next 45 minutes to post it in the chat, and I will get to as many questions, comments as I can. One thing I will do quickly is check Twitter. And another thing I want to do is update you guys as to what tire compounds we have for this weekend. So hold on. Let me just have a quick look. And right, so the tire compounds this weekend, the C4 compound is the softest compound this weekend and is the red soft tire. The medium compound is the C3 and the hard tire is the C2. Around this track, there should be a 2 to 3/10 of a second gap from one tire to the next. For example, the lap time difference between the soft and the medium should be about 2 to 3/10 of a second. And the same from medium to hard should be about 2 to 3/10 of a second. And definitely for the sprint race tomorrow, I'm expecting maybe quite a few soft tyre runners, because I don't think that soft tyre necessarily is going to give up very quickly. And as well, another thing I want to let you guys know is for the final 2 races of the season, Pirelli have decided to bring the 3 softest compounds they have for the Las Vegas Grand Prix and Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which is great to see. As also just seen, what do you call it? I've just seen a, what do you call it? Sorry, I just saw something funny on there on Twitter. Yeah, Albert Fabrega, who is one of the best F1 journalists, has just tweeted out that it has started to rain at Interlagos. Looks like light rain, though, for the moment. As I can see now, Sky F1 are back now live, I think, or they will be going live pretty shortly to cover qualifying. Hema says bold, daring predictions, even the timing. Love it. Herman the Tosser says, who's looking good? Chazza, yeah, there's nothing. From the practice session earlier, we can't tell really anything from that. So I can't say, really. I can only stick with my predictions going into the weekend. Kofi Dixon, is there any chance for Russell or Hamilton to take pole and win the race on Sunday? I mean, there's a chance, but it's most likely, very, very likely not to happen. I think in the dry, I just don't think Mercedes have a car for this track, qualifying or race, that can win this Grand Prix this weekend. And of course, taking pole position would really help. But even in the wet, I don't think necessarily that would mean that they would be the quickest team. If it does rain here in qualifying, it would help a lot, because they would be, I think, closer to the fight for pole, but I don't think necessarily that would make them the favourite to get pole. But, and Albert, so he tweeted that out about 40 minutes ago, did Albert Fabrega, that it's raining in Interlagos, and then 20 minutes later, about 20 minutes ago, he tweeted, and it has stopped raining. Let me quickly look at the weather currently in or at the Interlagos circuit, just to see what the what it's looking like in terms of weather. So at the minute it's dry and there is not really any rain about, but to the more southern part of Brazil, so more, south of Sao Paulo, there is quite a bit more rain. Just trying to see whether... Right, so actually, Not all of it, but some of that rain is going to move in the next 3 hours north, which will come towards Sao Paulo. So, yeah, it's going to be touch and go. I think we could get definitely a couple very small showers. But looking right now, I would say it probably will remain dry. But again, it's going to be touch and go. So we will see. In terms of the weather for tomorrow and Sunday, looks like it's going to be bone dry, if not hot and sunny. So, yeah, today's really the only day to worry about whether we're going to get any rain or not. McLaren F1 race. Good to see, mate. Says homeward bound to watch the quali. Lewis for pole, maybe. Yeah, I'd be very surprised if Hamilton took pole position. As well, you have to remember with Lewis Hamilton, he's not had a great record in qualifying here in Brazil. The last time Hamilton was on pole here was in 2018. But he's only been on pole position here in Brazil, I think, 3 times in, 15, 16 years, which is not a lot for someone who's been so successful around so many tracks, especially the older tracks that have been on the calendar, since he came onto the grid. So, yeah, it's not really been, even though, of course, he now has, I think, is it Brazilian citizenship? He has a great following here in Brazil as well. This has not been one of his more so successful Grand Prix as the Brazilian or Sao Paulo Grand Prix, whatever you want to call it. McLaren F1 race saying, just looked at Hamilton's runs in practice, lol. Hopefully they were race runs and not quali. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were, what do you call it? They were race runs. Let me just look at what pole position was last year. Pretty sure it was under 1 minute and 10 seconds, but I'll have a quick look. And oh no, it was well, let me just add this context. Of course, Q3 last year was a bit wet, so the lap times in Q3 were not as good as they could have been. The best time in qualifying last year was a 1 minute 10.8 by Max Verstappen. I reckon they probably could have done a mid 1 minute 10 last year if it was bone dry. So, Carlos Sainz did a 1 minute 11.1, was it? Let me have a quick look just to confirm. No, it wasn't. It's a 1 minute 11.7. So yeah. The lap times, yeah, I'd say at least a second away from what would be a really good lap time for for going for pole position or anything like that. Remember though, of course, the lap time gain on last year's Sao Paulo Grand Prix is not really going to be that big at all, because of course this time last year they were using the same power units in terms of the amount of power they had, because they're not allowed to develop these power units. The only thing they can do is adjust certain things for reliability reasons. So the only thing they could have gained will be, the aerodynamic development they've had in the last year or so. But remember, of course, going into 2023, they cut about half a second worth of downforce from the cars. So I wouldn't expect the cars to be, quite a bit quicker than they were at last year's race. So I think pole position is probably going to be a mid to late 1 minute 10, which would be, absolutely fine. But ultimately, in just over 35 minutes, we will find out. But yeah, make sure to keep posting your comments. And if you want to ask any F1 related questions, again, post them in the chat and I will answer them. There was someone earlier, a couple more comments from earlier. Got Doro, I think it is, says Lando Norris on pole is my take. I'd be very, very surprised by that. I think even in the wet, I'd be surprised if he ended up on pole. And then GRR187 says, how did the practice go? Is there any sprint race this week? Yep, there is a sprint race tomorrow evening here in the UK. It'll be. And yeah, let's hope it will be as good as it was last year. Because last year's sprint race was pretty good, I have to say. Even though I don't like the sprint, it was pretty good. So, fingers crossed it will be just as good again. And as I said earlier, yeah, obviously covering qualifying tonight. And then tomorrow night, I'll be covering the sprint race. And then the race on the Sunday night. And then reviewing this weekend and the last couple weeks, really, of F1 action. As we then, after this weekend, there'll only be 2 races to go. Still incredible to me that we've got, so little time left in the season. Yeah, by this time, or about 3.5 weeks from now, we'll be done for the season. It's amazing how the second half of the season has absolutely flown by. It has, and thankfully, the last couple races have actually been pretty good, given the circuits we raced at. So at least they've been entertaining to a certain extent, the Grand Prix that we've had. Because if we were having really boring races, so desperate for this season to end, it's not too bad at the minute. And I think the reason that is because Red Bull, of course, not really developed their car that much this season. And the other teams have a bit more, and that's why Red Bull don't look as far ahead compared to the others as they probably are in reality. And oh yeah, there's a couple more things I do want to. I'll go back to these pictures. Sorry if I frozen there on the Haas picture. There is a couple more things I want to quickly get into. One, the pictures I'll be showing during the watch-along part in about half an hour is going to be the pictures, unfortunately, from Mexico, because I didn't have enough time to collect enough pictures from this weekend's Grand Prix to be able to show that on screen. So yeah, unfortunately, that's what I'm going to be showing on screen, the pictures of the cars from Mexico. But of course, by tomorrow, I'll have pictures of the cars from here in Brazil. And another thing I wanted to quickly announce is, I think I said this, was it last week or the week before, that I am going to very soon announce what my plans are content-wise for the winter break. And I can announce that I will be making that announcement probably this time next week. What I'm going to do is probably maybe start of next week, maybe even this weekend. I'm going to write out the amount of content that I am going to publish during the winter break, which is from the very end of November until basically the end of February. And yeah, what I'll do is I'll list the amount of live streams that I'm going to be doing, and I'll list the amount of recorded videos that I plan to do, so that you guys know how many pieces of content is coming. There won't necessarily be exact dates for certain things. I will have exact dates for live streams, but for the recorded videos, that'll be a bit more flexible, let's say. But yeah, I do have some content definitely planned for the winter break. And like I said, next week I'll let you guys know a lot more about that. So let's come to you guys in the chat. And the tosser says, I want Lando to win this one. Hema says, do you think that it was a case of conserving tyres for the race that few teams didn't bother attempting quali pace in FP1? Yes and no. I think, there's no point using a set of soft tyres if you're not going to properly use them for their main purpose, which is, to set very quick lap times on low fuel. But also the teams, because it's the only practice session of the weekend, it's the only real chance teams have to work on the setup and to know what the handling of their car is like on heavy fuel, and to know what their lap times are on heavy fuel to gauge, what the long run pace is looking like. So that's why that FP1 session is very boring, because the teams are not trying to do anything. They're just trying to collect as much data as possible and make sure they have the setup as right as they can, because after that practice session, when we get to the start of qualifying, which is in another half an hour, that's when Parc Ferme begins. And at that point, the teams can't do anything to the setup. So that's what makes practice, just a non-event front weekend. Menace Won the Goat says, I hear people saying Hamilton is past his prime. What do you think? I think I can see why people say that. I mean, certain people are probably going to say that in a more of a antagonistic way. If they're, fans of, another driver, another team. But if there's, more so serious people saying that, I can see why they would say that, because the Lewis Hamilton we're seeing now is great. Don't get me wrong. Lewis Hamilton this season has been great, but it has not been the best version of Lewis Hamilton, the one we've seen this year and in 2022 as well. There are a couple reasons for that, which are not necessarily in his control, but the fact is, he's not been as good as he was at his peak. So I think maybe, yeah, he is past his prime, but that doesn't mean he's going to be unable to win a championship ever again. Because at the end of the day, the first thing the what do you call it? The first thing they need, or Lewis Hamilton needs, is a car quick enough to fight for the championship. So if he is past his prime, then yeah, maybe he is, but I don't think necessarily that's going to cost him maybe more, podiums, wins, and if Mercedes, build a much better car again, championships. So yeah, I think it's difficult to know though at the moment, properly whether he is past his prime, because this season's been very good. Last year wasn't amazing from him, but he was still pretty good. And yeah, I think we'll know more next year as to whether he is truly past his prime. And hopefully next season, Mercedes have a car that can win the championship. Scott Doro asks, heard anything about Hulk's visit to the stewards? Yeah, Lando Norris and Nico Hulkenberg collided in practice one. Bit of a clumsy incident. I think just a miscommunication between the two drivers. And it has been announced in, 10 minutes ago. Chris Medland tweeted, he's of course a prominent F1 journalist, probably the best out there, saying, no further action on the Norris Hulkenberg contact, as the stewards felt neither driver was predominantly to blame. So there you go. And the tosser says Hamilton should at some point take 2 to 3 season break and make a comeback. I I don't think he should, to be honest. I think, obviously, once he finally finishes up his F1 career, he'll have plenty of stuff that, doing outside of Formula One, fashion stuff, maybe music stuff, things like that. But there's no point taking a break from F1, I think. You may as well just stay in Formula One. Because I think if he was to take a 2 to 3 year break, I don't think he would come back any better than he is now. And I think most likely would come back worse than he is now. So, yeah, I don't think there's really much use in that. Going to have a period of F1 with too many new drivers. So F1 will need to have at least a few known names on the grid. Yeah, in terms of, Formula One, Liberty Media, in terms of them marketing the sport, yeah. People like Hamilton and Alonso sticking around is great because obviously people remember them from the also glory days of Formula One. Yeah, I reckon. I mean, next year the grid is not really that different, is it? But 2025, I think we're going to see some changes. A couple drivers probably from F2 come onto the grid, and possibly a new team as well in Andretti. So yeah, we will see what happens there. Before I get on to any more of your comments or questions, though, I just want to post the link of the stream out in a couple more places before we get into this session, because we are only 25 minutes away. Make sure to keep posting those comments and questions, and I'll get to them in a moment. And I'll just quickly post this on my community tab. Join us here to watch along qualifying in Brazil. And I'll just post it on Twitter. Well, and see if there is any updates as to the weather. So, right. Join us here to watch along qualifying the Brazil GP. I have to say, I really wish this race was just called the Brazilian Grand Prix. It's annoying that it's called, the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. It is really annoying. A lot more annoying than the, changing the name of the Mexican Grand Prix to the Mexico City Grand Prix. So yeah, I wish they would go back to the normal name. But there you go. And can't see any updates about the weather, so I'm assuming it's dried up again. So, yeah. 24 more minutes, and then we will be into qualifying. Just like that. Ottomaya Parker says, instead of doing sprints, which I am a fan of, or budget caps and etc., I think bringing a tire war back would be the best idea. What do you think? It would bring a natural element back to the sport. Yeah, I would be for it, but I think that I don't think Formula One is gonna do that, and I think the gigantic stain of what happened at Indianapolis in 2005 will really live on for a long time, because it was such a bad PR event, that whole what happened. And of course, if the tires had been, if it had been a single tire supplier, then things very well could have been different. So yeah, I would like to see it, but I don't think we are gonna see it probably for another at least decade, maybe even 15, 20 years, I think. Um, yeah, I just don't think we're gonna see it in the next, say, few years. Of course, Pirelli, they have signed a new contract to be the tyre supplier until 2027. There is an option, I think, for them to be a tyre supplier in 2028 as well, if they want to. But after that, looks like we're probably going to get Bridgestone or someone else, definitely. Um, Herman says K-Mag and Hulk are extremely lucky to be given second chances. Um, I wouldn't say Hulkenberg is extremely lucky, because we have to remember in his final year at Renault in 2019, he wasn't great, but he wasn't deserving of losing a place on the grid. He wasn't that bad, was Hulkenberg. And he's been great this season. Magnussen, though, I think you could argue that, because this season Magnussen has been one of the most disappointing drivers from that midfield pack. He's been very slow in qualifying and just not really delivered a lot of the time. Right, let me have a look on Twitter to see if there's any breaking news quickly whilst I wait for some more questions to be posted. Yeah, we are absolutely, no pun intended, motoring towards qualifying. Yeah, we're only 20 minutes away. I'm going to see if there's any news. And I can't see anything. Let me have another quick check of the weather at Interlagos again, just to see what it is looking like in terms of rain. And let me just see what it is local time currently in Sao Paulo. So local time, it is what? It's almost 3 p.m. So yeah. All right. So earlier I was looking at the wrong time for the weather. I was looking a bit too late. I'm looking now at 3 p.m. and yeah, there's not going to be any rain. But there is still a lot of rain south of the circuit. So if it does move up quickly, then we could see a bit of rain. But at the minute, it's forecast to be bone dry with a bit of cloud, bit of sun by the looks of it. So we will see if that rain, does eventually come or not. Right, let me put the Sky F1 coverage back on a second. The break. I was just gonna try and see what the weather was like live. Herman says Hulkenberg eventually will be in a hot seat and get his podiums and possibly victory. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that curse, maybe you can call it the Interlagos curse, given what happened here in 2012, even 2010, even though in 2010 he wasn't expected to hold on to pole position. I don't think he's going to break that curse, unfortunately. Ottomai Parker says, I think it's a better idea than trying to come up with gimmicks, and the Indianapolis incident in this kind of era would actually bring more publicity. That is true. It would bring more publicity, but it wouldn't be good. It would not be good, trust me. And I know there is that saying that, what is it? There's no such thing as bad publicity, is it? Is that the saying? There is. The people that say that are, or the people that treat publicity like that are some of the most, or more so, controversial figures in life. There is absolutely a thing such as bad publicity. Yeah, an incident, again, like we had in Indianapolis in 2005, that would generate a lot of publicity. It definitely wouldn't be good. And it would cause the same thing to happen like what happened back then. Ticket sales for F1 and interest in F1 would dramatically decrease. And it did. After that happened in 2005, the interest in Formula One just decreased because it left such a bad taste in people's mouths, and it was such a farce of a weekend that American motorsport fans just didn't want to know. And that's why 2 years later, we had the final US Grand Prix for a few. So, yeah, if that happened again, yeah, it'd be publicity, but it wouldn't be the sort of publicity you'd want. It'd be the sort of publicity that would make your, make the value of Formula One dramatically drop. And that is what Liberty Media do not want. Because remember, their goal at the end of the day, Liberty Media, is to increase the value of Formula One as much as possible, so sell it on, most likely sell it on to someone else for a much higher price than they bought it for. Because really, that's what American businesses do, or a business like Liberty Media does. They just want to get as much money out of it as they can, so they can sell it later. Mark Mitchell saying Trinidad and Tobago in the house. Yeah, we do have a couple people watching from some surprising places, I have to say. And yeah, great to see you. And I hope, again, as I normally say at the start of the stream, no matter what part of the world you're from, I hope you're all having a really good time, or as best a time as possible. I know at the minute the world is a bit more of a precarious state. And, well, the world's been in a more precarious state really since COVID hit about, 4 years ago. So, yeah, I have to say as well, talking of COVID, it is amazing that the pandemic was nearly 4 years ago in terms of the very start of it. It doesn't feel that long ago. But yeah. Yeah. Let me just have a further look on Twitter to see if there's any more news. Whilst we wait for some more comments, questions, and the sort. Yeah, just 14 more minutes until we're underway. And I can't see anything. No, can't see any news at the minute. The only other thing I did see was Pierre Gasly got very unhappy in the first practice session because he was on a lap and he came across a car that held him up a bit. And guess who it was? It was his teammate, Esteban Ocon. Gasly was very unhappy, rightfully so. How the blue hell are you holding yourselves up when you've got access to, where the cars are and access to so much data and all of that? It's quite something to fuck that up. On Sky F1 at the moment, Martin Brundle just doing a piece about, I think, just Interlagos in general. Of course, we have been racing at Interlagos, not full time, since 1972, I think it is, or 71. But this has been the, what do you call it? This has been the most used track for races in Brazil. We did have that track, I think, was it outside of Rio de Janeiro in the 80s for a few years. And then we came back, thankfully, to Interlagos, I think, in 1990. And ever since 1990, we've been racing here 33 years straight. And it was also announced, guys, earlier that the Sao Paulo Grand Prix will remain on the calendar until 2030. So still plenty more exciting races coming in Brazil, we hope, for the next few years. Right. Let's see. No, there's no more comments. Or is there? Let me have a look. Herman says Checo to Aston Martin 2024. If Aston Martin had announced already that Lance Stroll was not going to be at the team, then yeah, I think that would have been a possible move, but I don't think that is possible anymore. Fernando Alonso, from what he said, he's committed to Aston Martin next year. Stroll, obviously, it's been confirmed that he's staying, but of course, before he went to Red Bull, he was racing with what is now Aston Martin. So I wouldn't be surprised at that move necessarily for the future. Ottomeyer saying, yeah, but what if Pirelli, we've seen Pirelli put a limit of laps on tyres a few races ago. What if nobody could race because you only had one supplier? The thing is, though, this is what you need to remember when it comes to what happened in Indianapolis in 2005. And not just Indianapolis in 2005, but during the tyre war in the 2000s between Bridgestone and Michelin from 2001 to 2006. The tyres were a lot softer. The groove tyres, they were a lot softer during that era because of how aggressive the development was during that period. And of course, back then, there was a lot more testing, but still, the development of the tyres was a lot more aggressive to make them, super effective and performing at a very high level for qualifying, but also have good durability for the races. And they became, again, a lot softer, the tyres, than they were, say, in 2000 or 2001. And if we had two tyre companies in F1 at the minute, say Pirelli and Michelin, the Pirelli and the Michelin tyres would be a lot softer because the teams would be demanding the tyre companies go, and go more aggressive, let's say, with the development of the tyres and make them even softer than they can for that extra lap time. Because even though these tyres for 2023, some of them are around certain tracks soft, some of the tyres I think can be a bit too hard. So yeah, they could definitely be made softer if they needed to for from a competitiveness standpoint. But the reason there will never be a race where we can't race because Pirelli, who are at the moment the single supplier, let's say, what do you call it? Let's say they, the tires for whatever reason, are not good for a race weekend, and they cannot use them for a race. The reason that's never going to happen is because Pirelli do not design these tires to be as competitive and as quick as possible to give the drivers as much grip. They're designed to give the drivers grip, but also to be quite durable. And that's why with a single supplier, you're never going to have a situation like Indianapolis in 2005. Because back then, the tyre companies were pushing the limits of, safety when designing those tyres. When nowadays, and with a single supplier, that doesn't happen. Because why push the limits of safety when you're not competing against anyone else? So that's why that's never going to happen in terms of not having a race at all, because the tyres are unraceable. But what? How many? Oh, the start of qualifying has been delayed. Why? Why is that? We haven't even seen a reason why. It's not even been announced what the reason is. Oh my god. This is such a stupid reason. Unless there was a lot of debris on the track from a support session that took place before this qualifying. So the start of qualifying has been delayed because the FIA wants to carry out more sweeping and cleaning of the track after a previous support session. The FIA are anticipating a 15-minute delay. What are they sweeping? If it's just very minor stuff, who gives a fuck? Let's get out there and get going. Jesus Christ. Right, well, I'm going to have to redo the timer now. Because it appears we have got not 7 or 8 minutes remaining. We've got more like, what will it be? 22 minutes it should be remaining. So there you go. How piss poor is that? Oh, we just want to sweep the track a bit more. Of what? Rubber? Like, what are you sweeping? And when you look at the track and what they're sweeping, you can't clearly see it. So it can't be anything that massively bad. So yeah, that's just a joke as far as I'm concerned. Herman asks, what are the weather conditions in Brazil? Is it cloudy? Yeah, it is cloudy, but looking at the chances of rain that I did a few minutes ago, looks like we're not going to get any rain for this session, which is good. Because I actually think we're in for a better, more exciting session if it's dry. So, yeah. Really, the threat of rain for this weekend is only for today. Let me look at, what do you call it? Let me look at tomorrow and the chance of rain, just to confirm. Because I looked yesterday and it said for Saturday and Sunday that there was basically no chance of rain. So let me just have a quick look. So for tomorrow's sprint race, let me look. Yeah, no chance of rain for tomorrow. And then on Sunday, there is absolutely no chance of rain. There is, yeah, there's rain nowhere near in the vicinity of Sao Paulo on Sunday. So on Sunday, should be a pretty hot race. Barham says debris on the track. It must have been, quite a bit more debris than it actually was, or that they actually showed. Because, yeah, when they just showed them sweeping the track, and it looked like they were sweeping literally nothing. So, yeah, I think it's a bit over the top. Like, it was like loads of carbon on the track or something, then I can understand it, but I didn't see that's what it was. So, and by the way, yeah, the timer is showing on my end 19 minutes to go until qualifying starts. That's not confirmed necessarily that we've got that long to go. The FIA have anticipated a 15-minute delay, so that's why I've put it as another 19 minutes to go, because it should start qualifying, should have started in about 4 minutes. So, yeah, we'll see if it does start in about 19 minutes time. Let's hope it does. Confirmation again as they're just going through the F1 intro. The 3 tyre compounds this weekend, C4, C3 and C2. It is very hot, I have to say, despite it not being sunny. 30 degrees, the air temperature. 30 degrees Celsius, and then 40 degrees Celsius for the track temperature. So, even though it's not sunny, it is very warm out there, and that is, yeah, that's not great omens heat-wise for the rest of the weekend if the sun does come out. But yeah, we'll see when qualifying gets underway. Let's hope the delay's not too long. Uh, Brabham saying bring back Massey. That would be, if you're going to do any sort of gimmick, that's the gimmick, isn't it? Bring back Michael Massey. That would definitely be a gimmick that would increase bullshit more than excitement. Matt Marino says the FIA is suffering for I call terminal edupasitis. I don't know what that is. Ottomaya Parker says the teams push the limits of safety all the time. What's the difference, lol? The difference is the teams are building their car to be as quick as possible and also, make it as safe as they can and not have to compromise too much on certain, parts of the car that help for reliability and, safety. But with Pirelli, because they're not in Formula One to win races, because they are the single tyre supplier, they don't need to, and they don't push the limits with the design of the tyre, which is why that is, you're not, what you're comparing there, that's not the same thing. Teams pushing the limit is not the same as what Pirelli do when it comes to, or what, the tire suppliers rather did back in the day. It's not the same thing necessarily. And plus, with these cars now, there are so many parts of the car that have to be designed in a certain way to make the driver safe. And obviously, these cars are quite a bit safer than they were 20 years ago. So, yeah, the teams, even though they try to push the limit with the design of their cars, they can't really push the limit too much of the actual way the cars are allowed to be designed to, um, to make the best car they can. So they can't really push the limits of safety that much because of the things the FIA have put in place to avoid teams going over the top. But yeah, it's in terms of teams pushing the limit and the tire company pushing the limit, it's not the same thing. It just isn't. Um let me have a look. See if there's any news. I was gonna say as well, another reason why it's not the same, the teams pushing the limit by a company, is because of course, let's say let's say Pirelli decided, let's make our tire as grippy as possible, and we won't even bother caring about how much it wears out and how much load is put through the tires by making it quite a bit softer and more aggressive. If they were to do that, fine. But at the end of the day, with the teams, with them pushing, the limit and trying to make their cars as quickly as possible, no designer makes their cars in a way that rips their tires apart or wears their tires out more so than other teams. What you're looking for when you design a car is a car that is as quick as possible, but also doesn't degrade its tires too much, which is basically what Red Bull have. So just because you push your car or push yourself to the limit of designing your car doesn't mean necessarily that it will be less safe in certain areas, especially when it comes to wearing your tires out, because the best cars are the ones that don't wear their tires out more so, like the Red Bull. So, but again, like I said, teams pushing the limit with their car design and Pirelli pushing the limit, or tire companies in general pushing the limit with their design of the tires is two completely different things. Trying to see if there is any other news bring you. As still on the screen it just says qualifying is delayed. I can't even see that many marshals on the track, and they don't look like they're really sweeping that much, so I have no idea what they're doing, really. Well, there you go. They've just announced Q1 will start at 15:15 local time, which is for us in about 12 minutes time. So we will be starting at 1:15, thankfully. Kahima says it's about to be midnight in India. Need to go out early morning. Pissed FIA can't finish sweeping in time despite doing it for quite some time. Brevin says I won't put it past Ferrari. Lol. Yeah, it just ends up being the case that some teams with the design of their cars, they just end up making it in a way that wears its tires out more so than other teams. Normally, the thing that causes that to happen is more so suspension or chassis related. It's more of a fundamental problem. It's not something that you can just fix with an upgrade. But yeah, normally the reason most teams don't struggle excessively with managing tires is because when you're trying to build it to be as good as possible, you're not building it to wear its tires out. That's not what makes quick racing car. Because even if you are amazingly quick in qualifying, if you can't look after your tires for 5 laps, then there's no point having a good car in qualifying. Yeah, we are, 11 minutes away from the start. So get ready, guys, for this qualifying session. And if you haven't let me know already, post in the live chat, who do you think will take pole position, and what do you think the top 3 will be in qualifying? And as well, there is a poll running at the top of the live chat. And I've asked you guys, who do you think will take pole position at the 2023 Sao Paulo Grand Prix? And your options are Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Sainz. Let me know out of those 4 drivers who you think most likely takes pole position in Brazil. Drivers are just now getting ready to get in their car. And I was just going to quickly touch on some of the drivers on the grid who have taken pole position here before. Lewis Hamilton, of course, has taken pole position here a couple times, or 3 times, I think, in total. Max Verstappen took pole here in 2019. Valtteri Bottas started on pole in 2021, but that's because he won the sprint race. George Russell, same. He obviously started the race on pole because he won the sprint race last year. But actually, it was Kevin Magnussen who finished first in the Friday qualifying. Who else have we got? Actually, Valtteri Bottas did qualify on pole in 2017. Fernando Alonso has taken pole here. He was on pole here in 2005, and that was at Interlagos. That was the race weekend where Fernando won his first ever World Championship in September of 2005. That was. Who else has took pole here and is on the grid? Don't think there's. Oh yeah, Hulkenberg, Nico Hulkenberg, who of course was on pole here in 2010. Other than that, though, I think that's it. So yeah, Alonso, Hulkenberg, Hamilton, Bottas, Verstappen, and I guess you could say Russell. Well, so the drivers looking to start on pole here for the first time ever. Of course, 2 Ferrari drivers, Leclerc and Sainz, Sergio Perez, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri. We'll see. Get a new pole sitter here in Sao Paulo. Q1 underway. 8-minute time. Brabham is going for a K-Mag pole again. That would be something amazing. Even more amazing if he was to repeat it. As well, I've just seen a tweet from Chris Medland saying there's a pretty big shower heading for the circuit as well that looks like it could hit during Q1. But he does say it might break up before then. Yeah, there is, again, around the circuit, there are showers, but it's very isolated. It's not like a proper big weather system of rain. So if we do get rain, it should be a small shower. I don't think it's going to be a proper buckets load of rain. I don't think it's going to be quite that bad. Tracy Woodbridge says, come on, Hope Perez, Hope Sainz, and Hope Max are the first three. Of course, Fernando fourth. I would be probably unrealistic, but my perfect start. Hello, by the way, to Vinster. Good to see you, mate. And, yeah. We are just a few more minutes away. As I said earlier, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because we do qualifying, race, and sometimes sprint race watch-alongs for the Grand Prix that take place. And, of course, we have done so in 2023. Still got a couple races to go after this weekend. So make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell if you're new. And for everybody watching right now, smash that like button if you haven't already. We're on 34 likes. Let's try and get up to 50 likes if we can in the next, say, half an hour or so. Lando Norris is just getting strapped in to his McLaren car. Lando never really had a strong weekend here in Brazil. 2019, he, I think, finished in like 7th or 8th place, whilst his teammate, Carlos Sainz, came from the back to finish on the podium. 2021, Lando finished, I think, was it 6th or 7th? Again, wasn't a great weekend. Then last year, obviously, both McLarens retired from the race, and that's what cost them ultimately passing Alpine in the championship. So, yeah, not great history for Lando here, and maybe this will be the start of him reversing that fortune. Guys, of Carlos Sainz awaiting start of this session. Hyper alert, and Carlos Sainz, of course, in the Ferrari, a driver to look out for in this session. And there is, on the broadcast, Kevin Magnussen, who this time last year took pole position for the first time in his Formula One career, even though he only started on pole for the sprint race. But it does actually count as a pole position. And looking at the weather radar, yeah, there is some rain, some heavier rain coming, but it looks to me like it's more so going to go past the circuit rather than hit the circuit. They might get the outer edge of the rain, but I don't think they're going to get like properly swamped by it. Will F1 Gaming saying, I'm not making the same mistake as Mexico with Ricardo. No, you definitely shouldn't do that. Good to see a packed crowd. Wait, start of this session. And as we are now just about 3 minutes away, let's hide this timer and just quickly touch on the championship standings before getting into qualifying. Max Verstappen, of course, the champion. Sergio Perez Needs a big qualifying, only 20 points clear of Lewis Hamilton in third. Carlos Sainz in fourth, level on points with Alonso. You'd expect Sainz to pull away from Alonso in the next couple, or really the final 3 races. Lando Norris in sixth. We'll see what he can do. Leclerc seventh. This weekend, you would imagine he'll make progress on that position. Russell in eighth, Piastri ninth, and Pierre Gasly in P10. And on the constructors' side, Red Bull, of course, the champions. Mercedes second, Ferrari third. Ferrari only 22 points behind. They need a very good start to the weekend here if they're going to catch Mercedes for second this weekend. McLaren in fourth, 20 points clear of Aston Martin in fifth. Alpine sixth, Williams seventh, 12 points clear of AlphaTauri and Alfa Romeo in eighth and ninth. And Haas, 10th in the championship. So, let's get into it. Oh God, what have I done? Hold on. I don't know what's happened to my running order. It's for some reason it's resized itself or something. Right, I'm gonna have to deal with this quickly then. This is absolutely phenomenal timing, I must say. Yeah, I don't know what happened there with the running order, but normally with the running order, it just stays as is. So I'm going to just leave it like that for a second, and then I'll fix it hopefully in a minute, as Oscar Piastri already waiting at the exit of the pit lane. As, of course, if they're expecting rain, they need to get out there and get these laps done ASAP. I'll get the timer on screen at the 17-minute mark. But, yeah, let me try and fix this situation with the running order. Yeah, this should not be happening. So let me try and... yeah, try and get this done. Again, I have no idea why it's all of a sudden changed. It shouldn't. It should have just remained as normal. Right. To keep increasing the bloody size of it. Hold on. As the session has started. Right. Now let me lift it up and see. Oh, I don't know what's happening. For some reason it's I don't know what's happened with my running order. Something's broken or something. So let me just quickly hide that for a second, and I will try and get that back on screen. I don't know if it's because my PC or I had a power cut at the very start of my original qualifying stream, so I don't know if that's what's done it. But yeah, I have no idea what's happened there. And now, I'll be honest, I don't really know what to do. But let me get the timer on screen. There you go. And I'll just quickly readjust that. So we've got 17 minutes to go in Q1. And hopefully I can get this sorted in a bit less time than 17 minutes. So just give me a second, guys, to try and solve this issue. Again, apologies about this, but yeah, this really should not be happening, and I am very surprised that it's happening. Right, so hold on. To get the text. Get the text up in white. How do I do that again? I can't remember. Oh my god. How do I do this? No, that's not it. Yeah, sorry about this, guys. I literally don't know why it's done this. So, yeah. Right, I think this might get the color back. There you go. And now, hopefully, I redo it, it will start to work as we've got drivers on lap times right now. Right. Hopefully, as I increase the size of this, it'll go back to normal. As Oscar Piastri is about to set the first lap time of this session. So, hold on. Right. Well, in a minute, I will readjust that again. I just want to quickly do the order a bit, and I need to also do the dotted line as well. It's so fucking annoying, honestly, what's happened. I have no idea what's happened. It's now fucking me up. So Albon is up to second. Fernando Alonso is up to third. Logan Sargent is in fourth place for the moment. And I will try see if I can get this further fixed. As hold on, that will work. Right, almost there. Hold on. There you go. Thank fuck for that, because I was panicking, guys. I got to be honest, I was having a proper panic attack there. Right. Hopefully, it will not do that again. I have no idea why it did that. It just reset for some reason. Right, Lando Norris is top of the timesheets on a 1 minute 10.6. What a lap time that is to start Q1 and, well, to start qualifying. Lance Stroll is up to third place. I will play around with the filters of the text, by the way, because I want to make it a bit brighter if I can, but I'll figure that out in a moment. Also, one thing I need to do, I'll do that now, is the dotted line. So let me just quickly put that on the screen. And there you go. So anyone below the dotted line, of course, at the end of Q1 will be out of the session. As Lewis Hamilton now goes up to second place. Russell is up to fourth. Let me do that. Norris, Hamilton, Verstappen, Gasly now up to fourth place. That's a good time for the Alpine driver. Gasly fourth, Russell fifth. Kevin Magnussen is up to sixth place. Not anymore, because Daniel Ricciardo has popped up to fifth with his first time of Q1. Ricciardo fifth, Russell sixth, as Perez comes back into the pits. Maybe the rain has started to fall, or maybe he's made a mistake. I don't know. So Ricciardo fifth, Russell sixth, Magnussen seventh, Stroll eighth. Ocon is ninth, with Tsunoda in 10th. And then Bottas 11th, Piastri 12th, Albon 13th, Alonso 14th, Hulkenberg in 15th. And in the drop zone, the two Ferraris of Sainz and Leclerc, Sergio Perez, and then Sargent and Zhou. Here's a replay of Gasly and Russell, and that will be investigated after the session. And I think Russell under investigation possibly for impeding. But hold on a second. Let me just I can increase the brightness of the text possibly. And it doesn't appear like it's actually getting lighter. Oh. Hold on. Back to what it was. Right, well, yeah. I don't know how to get it back to the exact way it looked, but at least it's back on the screen. Because, I was having a proper panic there. So, yeah, we have got 10.5 minutes to go in Q1. And in the drop zone, the two Ferraris of Sainz and Leclerc, Sergio Perez, Logan Sargent, and Zhou Guanyu as Ferrari telling Sainz no rain expected for 2 to 3 minutes. We have one timed lap. As Charles Leclerc does a purple first sector. And Logan Sargent goes up to 12th place with a new lap. Sargent up to 12th. Leclerc, Carlos Sainz has done a good first sector, but it's nowhere near as good as Leclerc's. Leclerc's nearly 2/10 better in the first sector. As Leclerc now completes the middle sector, and he's 0.8 of a second up on Alonso, who is the driver at risk in 15th place. And here comes Charles Leclerc, sparking away beautifully to the finish line, and Leclerc goes quickest by 1/10.5 over Lando Norris. So Leclerc up to P1. Let's see where Carlos Sainz ends up. He won't be going quickest, but he needs to be going at least third, I would say, with this lap. And he goes fourth, but it's not the worst lap time. So Carlos Sainz up to fourth position. And he keep let me keep playing around with the settings to see if I can get it a bit brighter, the text. And there you go. There's the proper brightness. So hold on, let me bring that down, put this up, and this yeah, about there. Yeah, there you go. That is better now. As here is Oscar Piastri through a very high-speed right-hander. They're just showing a replay of him going through there in slow motion, sparking away. But yeah, in the drop zone at the minute, we have Albon, Alonso, Hulkenberg, Perez, and Zhou, as Hulkenberg actually goes up to 12th place. So Nico Hulkenberg climbs out of the drop zone for now, as possibly rain is about to fall. Again, it looks like it's not going to quite, the worst of it, hit the circuit, but it might get a bit of the circuit in it, as Kevin Magnussen is actually in 13th. As Sergio Perez improves up to 4th place. And that is a much better lap time. So Perez in 4th. And here's a replay of Perez at the final real corner of Jinsao, and ran a tad wider on the exit than you ideally would want to, but it was nothing terrible. I like that they've built that infield section to include fans. As yeah, looking at the radar, it's passing the circuit, but it's not going to quite, hit the circuit properly. As Oscar Piastri is now second. Lance Stroll now up to 3rd place. And then Norris in 4th, Perez 5th, Alonso now up to 6th place for Aston Martin. And then Hamilton 7th, Sainz 8th, Verstappen 9th, Gasly 10th, Ricciardo 11th, Russell 12th. Not anymore, because Esteban Ocon is up to 11th place. So then it's Ocon 11th, Ricciardo 12th, Russell 13th, Hulkenberg 14th, Magnussen 15th, and now in the drop zone, it's Tsunoda, Bottas, Sargent, Albon, and Zhou. Tsunoda, though, is about to come to the finish line. Can he improve? Yes, he does. Not a personal best final sector, but he goes up to 6th place. So, Tsunoda, much improved. As Lewis Hamilton goes up to 6th place. And Russell now only 12th for Mercedes. That is not a good lap time. He is in trouble in 12th place. There is no doubt about that. As Max Verstappen improves, but only goes up to 5th place. Red Bull have not been that quick in this session. Nowhere near as quick as I expected, as Pierre Gasly goes up to 7th place. Pierre's had a good session so far as we enter the final 5 minutes in Q1. Here is on the broadcast, Valtteri Bottas. In the drop zone, can he get out? We're about to find out. You'd imagine he can. As, you know, he's had some great qualifying laps here in the past. As Mercedes telling Hamilton, we're going to take another new set. It looks like others have. Hamilton asking, but are we not safe? And Mercedes responding, yep, we are not confident. And they've got every right not to be confident because, yeah, with both cars, they're not that far ahead, really, of the drop zone. This is the great thing here at Interlagos. Because it's such a short lap, the gaps through the field are so close. So if you don't quite get, you know, good laps together, you can be in big trouble here. Valtteri Bottas, though, looking a lot better. And might just pop into the top 10 with this time. As his teammate Zhou goes up to 16th, Valtteri Bottas goes up to P12. That puts his teammate back down to 17th place. So the drop zone is now Hulkenberg, Zhou, Magnussen, Sargent, and Albon. That is the drop zone with 3.5 minutes remaining. As Alexander Albon, who is surprisingly last after all the hype I gave him, and Williams, he is on an improved lap, is the Thai driver, as he's half a second up on Ricciardo, who in 15th place is the driver at risk. Ricciardo has just come back out to the track for another flying lap as Alexander Albon comes to the line. 4th place in the Williams. Will that be good enough? We'll have to find out. But I think anybody, really anybody, guys, in this final 2.5 minutes nearly, can be eliminated in this session. As, yeah, looks like to me the rain is just going to pass the circuit and not quite hit Interlagos, which is good to see. I'm pretty sure once that shower's gone, the chance of rain diminishes quite a bit. As here is Carlos Sainz, who's now in 12th place, starting what should be his final timed run of Q1. His teammate is quickest on a 1 minute 10.4 as Lance Stroll reports drops of rain. Remember, though, the drivers, they're going to feel like it's raining more than it actually is because, of course, they're moving at such a speed. And when the rain hits the visor of theirs, then, yeah, they're maybe thinking it's raining more than it actually is. But Sainz has done a personal best first sector. Logan Sargent has as well. And he is currently up on Ocon, who's the driver at risk. But I do get the feeling we're going to get a surprise elimination here because of how close it is. As Russell, much better first sector for him. He needs a good lap here if he's going to get through to Q2. As Carlos Sainz does a great final corner and now begins the climb to the start-finish line. Will this be good enough to get into Q2? Carlos Sainz to the line. It's 6th. It's not a great final sector. And maybe he'll be at risk. We'll have to find out. As here comes Logan Sargent with a minute remaining. Can he get himself out of the drop zone? He does, up to 15th, but I don't think that's going to be good enough. And that just is not a good enough lap time from Logan Sargent. As Nico Hulkenberg's in a purple first sector. Lewis Hamilton goes 4th. As George Russell goes quickest by a 10th and a half almost. And that should be good enough for him to get through to Q2. Hulkenberg goes third. Will that be good enough for the man who was on pole here 13 years ago? As now Daniel Ricciardo is in 18th place, but he is on now his final Q1 lap. Is it good enough to get him into Q2? As let's see what his middle sector is like. It's not too bad. As Kevin Magnussen improves all the way up to 6th place as the checkered flag now falls. These are the final laps. And here comes Ricciardo as Alonso goes up to 6th. Ricciardo only 16th. He is out in Q1. What a disappointment for the Australian. As now Yuki Tsunoda in 15th. He is the driver at risk. Valtteri Bottas, by the way, is in the pit lane, so he is out. Tsunoda stays in 15th. Esteban Ocon, though, has done a good middle sector, and he's currently 19th, but I do get the feeling that he might get into Q2 here, as Max Verstappen improves up to 2nd. And yes, Esteban Ocon up to 14th place, and I am pretty sure, yes, it is confirmed. It is good enough to get him into the second part of qualifying, and both Alpines barely get through to Q2. What a rip-roaring session that was. So, Q1 over and done with. Let's go through the teams and the drivers who are into the second part of qualifying. George Russell, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Nico Hulkenberg, Oscar Piastri, Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, Kevin Magnussen, Lewis Hamilton, Alex Albon, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly. And knocked out, guys, in Q1, the two AlphaTauris of Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo, Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo, Logan Sargent in the Williams, and the other Alfa Romeo of Zhou Guanyu. As here's a replay of Tsunoda passing an Alpine there in the pit exit. Don't know if that'll be allowed. Maybe he'll get investigated for that, we'll have to see. But Q2 will be underway in about 2 or 3 minutes from now. Of course, I'll sync the timer up at the 14-minute mark. Let me get the other dotted line ready to indicate the cutoff zone for Q2. So, there you go. And yeah, we'll be underway in 2 to 3 minutes from now. But yeah, very disappointed in AlphaTauri there. And Alfa Romeo as well. I don't know why they were so bad. I did not expect them to be getting both cars knocked out in Q1. That is quite the surprise. And of course, once we go through the data, we'll be able to understand in more detail why that ended up the way it did. Arvin Racing saying Stroll racing to keep his seat. Not really at this point. And also Arvin saying Danny Goodlord can't put it together. D. Walker asking what's Perez doing? I don't really know. In that session, it was a bit weird. He did a first lap time, which was not that great, but was then in the drop zone. Then he pitted instead of doing another lap. And then did another lap to eventually to get up to 4th place. And then after that, he didn't do any more fast laps, I don't think. And was actually on a quick lap there towards the end, but then backed off because Red Bull knew that he was not going to get eliminated. So they told him to back off and come into the pit lane so they can get ready a bit quicker for Q2. Brabham saying, I blame Will. McLaren from Racing Stroll keep a seat even if he's last. Mike on the crack would say it's a fast last. Oh, that's a good one. As let me just have a look on Twitter. So Gasly and Ocon have been noted for pit exit impeding, and Lance Stroll has been noted for a maximum delta time infringement. So plenty for the stewards to look at after qualifying is done with, and we've only got through we've only got through Q1. So Q2 should be underway in a couple minutes, and that rain shower, the worst of it should have been gone, as they just put up on the screen that Q2 will be starting in 2 minutes' time. Yeah, the eye of the storm, I think, has mostly passed now. So even though it does look a bit dark and it is very overcast, I think the most likely part of the session when it was going to rain, I think, has now passed, which is good. Because again, I think we're going to get a more exciting session in the dry than we will in the wet. But there is still some dark clouds around, so the teams, they have to be careful. Quite a bit of wind as well on a bit of a blustery, stormy day in Brazil. Of course, tropical big showers, not exactly foreign to this part of the world, as all the cars now queuing at the exit of the pit lane for the beginning of Q2. As the skies going into the turn 1, the sky looks a bit brighter in that direction, so looks a bit more encouraging this time around. And I hope, by the way, that the text on screen showing the running order, hope it's showing, well, and that you guys can clearly see it. Yeah, looking at the radar, yeah, very big shower passing the circuit, but nothing really hitting the track except for a few spots of rain here and there. There is another big shower after that, but again, I don't think that's going to hit the track. As the session is now underway. And again, I'll get the timer synced up in about 50 seconds time, as the Red Bulls are the first 2 cars out onto circuit. And yeah, the best lap time in Q1, I think, was a 1 minute 10.2. So let's see, when it comes to the fight for pole position later, how much better the top teams can get on lap time. Because pole position is going to be a 1 minute 9 point something. Probably a mid 1 minute 9, I would imagine. So let's see what the drivers here can do in Q2 to try and get a good eye in for Q3. As there you go. 14 minutes to go in Q2. We now look at Max Verstappen, who has started his first flying lap of Q2. Yeah, Red Bull were not super quick, really, in Q1. They haven't really shown the pace we, not only come to expect, but that we were expecting for this particular Grand Prix. So let's see whether we'll see it now. As Verstappen having to pass, I think, the 2 Ferraris there, just slowly coming out of the pit lane. There's an 18.4 for the first sector, which I don't know if that's a great first sector. The first sector, though, is not really that important. It's really about the middle sector. As Sergio Perez does a purple first sector, so good start for the Mexican, a few seconds behind Verstappen. As Max about to pass another slow car, looks like a Mercedes. It is. It was George Russell. As Max Verstappen, his lap so far pretty good. No obvious issues with it. As Verstappen has completed the middle sector. We'll see what it's like compared to Perez's middle sector in a moment. as for some reason on the broadcast they've got the wrong times showing. But Max Verstappen comes to the line and does a 1 minute 10.1, which is good, but it's not great. As Sergio Perez does a 1 minute 10.3. But yeah, if I'm Red Bull, I'm not too pleased about that because I don't think that was really that quick. As Fernando Alonso is just coming through the final sector now, as Alexander Albon has gone third at a 1 minute 10.8. As Alonso up to the line goes and actually does a purple final sector, which is very surprising. And he goes fourth, the slowest out of the now 5 times, because his teammate goes quicker. And I noticed in Q1, Stroll was consistently quicker, and he still is. So Lance Stroll up to third. Lewis Hamilton only fourth and slower than Lance Stroll. I do get a feeling some of these drivers are on a used set of tyres. That's why the lap times are not really that much quicker, as Lando Norris now goes second for McLaren. Here comes Russell to the line. And it's a poor lap time, a 1:11.0. That is shocker from Russell. As here comes the 2 Ferraris now. Leclerc, a 1:10.9. That's a very poor lap time. And Carlos Sainz does a 1:11.0. So yeah, they must be on a scrubbed set of tyres because there's no reason to be that slow. As Oscar Piastri goes up to third, so it's now second and third for McLaren, but I don't think we've seen the proper lap times yet of Q2. And Esteban Ocon now goes up to 7th, ahead of Albon and Alonso. Gasly goes up to 8th. A good start to Q2 for the Alpines. And yeah, Leclerc, Russell and Sainz in the drop zone, but I'm pretty sure they're on scrubbed tyres, which means, a used set of tyres. And visibly, yeah, they look like they have been used. So they should improve a lot. And we should see the drivers getting into the 1 minute 9s, say some of the top drivers, with the final laps of Q2. As the 2 Haases are now on an outlap. So let's see what Haas have. I had a good feeling about Haas in qualifying this weekend. Let's see whether they can demonstrate why I have a good feeling about them, as this is Nico Hulkenberg starting his lap, going into turn 1. And through turn 1 and 2 looks good so far. And now just flat out until the first sector time beam, where Hulkenberg is actually quicker than Verstappen in the first sector. Now enters the middle sector, as Magnussen does a much better first sector than Hulkenberg, even 10th of a second quicker. As Hulkenberg through turn 8, turn 9, this is where the Haas car will be a lot slower, as doesn't quite hit the apex of turn 10, but gets through it just fine anyway. As Lewis Hamilton in 6th place, I can see he's on an outlap. And Hulkenberg, good sector, that is, middle sector, almost 0.4 of a second up on Alonso. Hulkenberg, I think comfortably here, is going to go into the top 10. And here he comes to the line. And he goes up to 8th place. Kevin Magnussen, he's on a good lap as well. Where does he go? He goes 9th. So it is 8th and 9th for the 2 Haases. So in the drop zone, with 8 minutes to go in Q2, it is Alexander Albon, Fernando Alonso, Charles Leclerc, George Russell and Carlos Sainz. Leclerc, Russell and Sainz on an outlap though. Hamilton has just finished an outlap and he's now on a new quick one, as Mercedes telling Hamilton the track temperature is dropping, as Hamilton does a good first sector. And George Russell's done a decent first sector as well. But again, it's not really until the middle sector where you really get to see how good the lap is in terms of time. Hamilton looks pretty comfortable on this lap. He's not really having to move the steering wheel too much. Just very slight adjustments like you would normally do. Hamilton only a 10th down on Verstappen after the first 2 sectors. This is a good lap for Hamilton as he now climbs the hill and powers to the line as George Russell is on a pretty good lap as well. And Lewis Hamilton doesn't have a great final sector and goes 4th. Lost about a 10th of a second in the final sector to Verstappen as Russell goes 2nd. He's only a 10th and a half now down on Verstappen. So Russell up to P2. 2 Ferraris are on better laps. As Leclerc coming to the line now. And Leclerc, not a good final sector, but he goes 5th. As Carlos Sainz is now in the final sector. Where can he go? Sainz to the line. Goes 2nd. 900ths of a second slower than Verstappen. So Ferrari, they do have the pace. Carlos Sainz up to 2nd. But I still think we can go a bit quicker in this session. That's the replay of Hamilton losing the rear end a bit on the exit of turn 4. Yeah, that would have cost him probably a 10th and a half, maybe 2 tenths at most. So Lewis Hamilton has got more pace in that car. There is no doubt about that. But in the drop zone now, the 2 Haases of Hulkenberg and Magnussen, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, and Fernando Alonso only in 15th. And his teammate, at the minute, is into the top 10. Surely Fernando will not be humiliated here in Brazil, where he won his first World Championship 18 years ago. Fernando now starts a new flying lap with 5 minutes to go in Q2. Didn't look that great in the first corner, but no real major issues. And compared to Ocon, who's the driver at risk in the first sector, he's pretty much done the same first sector time. Understeered slightly wide at turn 4. And now into the high-speed turn 6. Brilliant corner, and the Aston Martin through there looks absolutely fine. And slight bit of understeer there through turn 8 there. And yeah, the front end of this Aston Martin doesn't seem to be connecting quite to the track. We know Alonso does like more understeery cars, but it seems a bit more understeery than really he wants. As yeah, he understeers slightly wide at Jinsao, the final corner as well. But his lap time at the minute is good enough to get him into the top 10 as he comes to the line now. And Alonso goes all the way up to 2nd place. What an improvement for Fernando Alonso. As Alex Albon only goes 14th. That is a surprise. As Lando Norris goes P1 for McLaren on a 1:10.0. As we're really starting to hot up now, as Sergio Perez is not that far away from completing his middle sector on a new, improved lap. But we've only got, 3.5 tenths separating at the minute the top 10. It is that close here in Brazil. As Sergio Perez, he's on a good lap. He might go quickest if he has a good final sector. He comes to the line. And no, it's not a good final sector, but he does go up to 3rd, which is quite an improvement of position, because he was in 9th. Perez up to 3rd. So in the drop zone, it is now Ocon, Hulkenberg, Magnussen, Gasly, Albon. The 2 Alpines, 2 Haases, and a Williams. As Albon, I don't know if he's had his lap time deleted, but he's now back down to 15th place. I think he has had a time deleted. As Max Verstappen is on a new flying lap. This should be Max's final flying lap before Q3. as Lewis Hamilton and George Russell are on outlaps. As Verstappen, not a great first sector time, 10th.5 down on Norris, and also losing the rear end a bit on turn 4. Red Bull not having a comfortable day here. Remember, Red Bull, they've not had, even though they won here in 2019, since then, they've been competitive here, but they haven't had great results for how competitive they were at those particular times. As Max Verstappen completes the middle sector, and it's not even an improved middle sector on what Max did earlier. So this might not put Max any higher up. As Max Verstappen comes to the line, does he improve on second? No, he does not. And that's his final time of Q2. Now we better hope that nobody below him can, massively improve. So yeah, first sector was not that great, and then turned into turn 4, and he just understeered wide. Maybe carried a bit too much throttle through the middle of turn 4. But yeah, it was not a great lap. As we're looking at the Haas of Kevin Magnussen that went quite wide through turn 8. As Esteban Ocon is on a final flying lap, which we're now in the final minute of Q2. Who can get out of the drop zone? Hulkenberg goes only 11th. He is out of Q2. Well, out in Q2, rather. Kevin Magnussen, he's not improved his first or second sector, and comes to the line and stays in 13th. So both Haases are out. That's disappointing for them. Ocon, he's done an improved middle sector, but I'm not sure this is going to be good enough to put him in to Q3. Pierre Gasly, though, has done a personal best first sector. As here comes Ocon to the line. And no, stays in 12th. Lewis Hamilton about to hit the line. Goes 6th. As the checkered flag now falls. And Pierre Gasly on a bit of a better lap than his teammate, but I still don't think this is quite going to be good enough. Might be good enough to put Gasly up in 11th, but I don't think this will get him into the third part of qualifying. And no, poor final sector, and he only goes 13th. So let's just wait for a couple more drivers to finish their lap times here. Alex Albon, by the way, came back into the pit lane and didn't come back out again. So he is out in 15th place. What a disappointing session for Williams. As Oscar Piastri has backed off, knowing that he is into Q3. So there you go, guys. That is Q2 over and done with. And into the shootout of Q3 is Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Oscar Piastri, and Lance Stroll, both Aston Martins into Q3. I don't even know how they did that, given the form they've been in recently. But out in Q2, guys, Nico Hulkenberg, Esteban Ocon, Pierre Gasly, Kevin Magnussen, and Alexander Albon. And Q3 will be underway in about 3 to 4 minutes' time. So yeah, I definitely did not get it right when it came to Aston Martin. I didn't think they'd be quick here, but credit to them. They got both cars into Q3. The last time they got both cars into Q3 was a long time ago. I don't even know when it was. Spa, maybe? Did they get into Q3 there with both cars? I think he was actually Spa, and that was a sprint weekend. That was what? Nearly 10 races ago. What, 9 races ago. So it's been a while for Aston Martin, but yeah, credit to them to getting into the third and final part of qualifying and having a much better session and weekend so far than I expected. Before we get into Q3, though, just want to say quickly, guys, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because tomorrow I will be back with the Sao Paulo Grand Prix sprint race watch-along live at 5 p.m. UK time, an hour and a half before the sprint race begins, to build up to it, preview it, and then do a watch-along for it as well. And then on Sunday, I'll be live for the race watch-along 2 hours before lights out at 3 p.m. UK time, live all the way until 7:30 p.m. or possibly later if it does go later. And then, of course, on Monday, I'll be doing a stream again at 7 p.m. UK time. So if you are new to the channel, then make sure to subscribe for more content like this, because we do cover every race weekend in plenty of detail. And for everybody watching right now, make sure to smash the like button. Of course, it does help the channel and the algorithm. We are on 56 likes. Let's try and get up to 75 plus likes if we can in the next, say, half an hour. So again, if you've not hit the like button yet, make sure to do so. Right. As Vince is saying in the chat, it feels like I'm cheating on Chazza when I have to watch a different stream. No problem. You watch wherever you want. As well, let's try to see if there's any more comments in the chat here. Of course, that poll running in the chat, I will finish up in a moment and read the results of it before we properly get into Q3. McLaren from Racing Quali here is powered by San Miguel. And also saying fair play, Lance is getting it from his sis, lol. Right, they've just said that Q3 will start in 3 minutes time. Bot says it's beginning to rain at the track. Well, we'll have to see in a moment whether it truly is, but I can't quite see it at the moment. As Chris Medland has just tweeted that all of the rain that has been threatening up to now has missed, but there's a big line of it that looks very likely to hit right at the end of Q3. Getting the lap in, as he says earlier, could be the key, just like it was last year. And yeah, I've just seen on Twitter, for Aston Martin, that is their first double Q3 result since Belgium, which was at the end of July, which feels a long time ago. Especially for a team 5th in the championship. Unacceptable, really, for them to have that that little amount of Q3 appearances for both cars. Sky F1 just showing some interviews with some of the drivers that have already been eliminated. They're just showing an interview with Ricciardo. Yeah, disappointing session for Ricciardo, but I don't think it's because of him as to why he ended up 17th. AlphaTauri just didn't have the pace. They were just pretty slow in the end. And we have to remember with Ricciardo, he's never really had a great race or that many great races here in Brazil. Yeah, I mean, if you think back to all of the Brazilian Grand Prix here, I can't really think of that many good ones, proper good ones that Ricciardo's had that were really memorable. So this is not one of his stronger tracks, as the sky incredibly dark over towards the run into turn 1. We might be getting some rain in a moment. And just like last year, guys, remember when Kevin Magnussen got on pole, he did it with his first lap only in Q3, because then right after that it started to rain. So setting the absolute best time you can immediately is the key. And this outlap is going to be very chaotic, because drivers will be making sure if they can, to be the first one to start their lap. Because if the rain does hit in a couple minutes' time, as Leclerc asking, rain expected when? And they say 7 minutes into the session. Yeah, if the rain hits in a couple minutes, for example, if you're the first driver to start their lap, then your lap time theoretically should be the best lap time. And it looks to me, and I can see it on the radar, that rain I was talking about, that there was a lot of rain south of Sao Paulo. It's now coming right towards Sao Paulo, and very quickly as well. So let's see if we will get through Q3 here without rain. Probably not. As the session has begun, and I'll sync the timer up in 45 seconds from now. But yeah, we could get as Max Verstappen there or Sergio Perez passing a Mercedes there on the exit pit lane. Now trying to pass Hamilton, and it is Max Verstappen. Hamilton slowly comes out of the pit lane. But if I'm one of the teams, I'm wanting to get my best laps in immediately, so that I don't have to rely on another lap halfway through the session when it could start to rain. Out comes the McLaren there. There you go. 11 minutes remaining in qualifying. And let me just finish up the poll in the chat. I asked you guys, who do you think will take pole position for the Sao Paulo Grand Prix? 215 votes. Thank you for voting. And you guys voted Max Verstappen with 42% of the vote. Hamilton second, 37%. Leclerc third, 12%. Sainz fourth, 7%. Let's see whether Max can take pole. As the sky is getting so dark to the point where I don't think it could get any darker. It is truly incredible how dark the sky has got around the circuit. If I was at the track, I'd be terrified. It's terrifyingly dark. But again, because of the part of the world we're in, this type of thing is common. As Max Verstappen, with 10 minutes to go, can he put in a time immediately good enough for pole position? That's what he needs to do. And it needs to be, really, I'd say a mid 1:09 if this is going to be a pole position lap. He does a good first sector, an 18.3. And he now goes through turn 6 and gets into the meat and bones of the lap. As Russell has done a slower first sector, no surprise there. As Verstappen running, bit wider than he would have wanted through turn 9. Now into turn 10. Same as well, just a bit wider than he would have wanted. And I think I could tell that he wasn't quite confident with the rear end of the car, but he does a purple middle sector and a very good middle sector as Stroll is currently P1 from Alonso in second. Here comes Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, who does a 1:10.7, which is, well, not quick at all, is it? Way slower than what he did earlier on as George Russell in 5th place. And these lap times are a lot slower, and I think the track conditions are contributing to that. Hamilton in 4th. Leclerc goes up to 2nd. 0.3 of a second away from Verstappen. Lando Norris only 7th. Carlos Sainz goes 8th. So we've got a yellow flag in the final sector, and it's for the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, as Sergio Perez would have had to have slowed down, surely, for that yellow flag, and that might cost Perez here, as he is going to actually go to the finish line. Let's see what lap time he does. And it's very slow. It's a 1:12.3. That, if the rain does hit, guys, that might be it here for qualifying, as, oh my goodness, that is the most terrifying cloud I have ever seen. It is unbelievably dark, the clouds. And it is like, It's like the city of Sao Paulo is being enveloped by it. And it could very well, guys, that could very well be it for the rest of qualifying. Because if the conditions don't get any better and it does start to rain, then, well, and there, Oscar Piastri going into the final corner of Jinsao, he just, yeah, he turned in, the rear end just came round on him and he couldn't do anything to stop it. Don't know if he touched the grass on the entry, but no rear end grip there for Oscar. Here is Carlos Sainz, who did go off the track at turn 2. So, yeah, and the rain does look like it is starting to fall, guys. So I think that is quite possibly it. Very similar, isn't it, to last year where it got incredibly dark and it then started to rain. But if this grid remains the way it is, then it's going to be quite a top 10 for Sunday's race, because you've got Max currently on pole, Leclerc second, and then Lance Stroll in third and Fernando Alonso in fourth. A second row lockout for Aston Martin would be something quite special, as Alonso saying on the radio, it's night. And then them saying, yeah, agreed. And yeah, I wouldn't bother. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I think at this point, it's not. I think it's unsafe to send them back out because it's so dark out there. And no shit, race control. Race control have just put up on the screen, change in climatic conditions. No shit, Sherlock. Jesus fucking Christ. Didn't know Mr. Bean was running the FIA this weekend. Yeah, I think that's it for qualifying. It's that dark out there that I don't think it is really safe to go out there, if I'm being honest. So I think, guys, that is qualifying over and done with. So, let's just see what the teams are going to do, though. Whether they're going to truly get, decide that, yeah, that's it. We're not going out again. Look, looks to me in the Ferrari garage on Leclerc, Charles Leclerc's end, like they're, yeah, Ferrari have given up, rightfully so, because I don't think that any more running is going to take place here. So there you go, guys. That is qualifying in Brazil. Max Verstappen will start Sunday's race on pole position. Leclerc will start alongside him on the front row for Ferrari. Disappointing that the weather happened the way it did for Ferrari, because I think they were robbed, really, of a proper chance. And yeah, the FIA have now red flagged the session because they're, well, actually, hold on. So, hold on. They've red flagged the session at 4 minutes and 19 seconds. And so session, they've said, will not be resumed. I was going to say, are they going to red flag it and wait for it to pass and then get going again? But clearly not. So, yeah, that is it for qualifying. So let me hold on a second. Let me just put over on the screen there. Qualifying officially confirmed that it will not resume. So hold on a second. So there you go. Q3 over. Qualifying is finished. Anticlimactic in the end, but there you go. Max Verstappen will start Sunday's race on pole position. Charles Leclerc will start on the front row in second. And then it will be the two Aston Martins on the second row of the grid. Lance Stroll qualifies in third. At the end of the day, when he needed to put in the lap, he did. And he's got a great position. Yeah, a bit lucky, but sometimes you have to make your own luck, and that's what he did there. Fernando Alonso fourth, Hamilton fifth, Russell 6th, Norris 7th, Sainz 8th, Perez 9th, and Oscar Piastri 10th. And the rest of the field will be Hulkenberg 11th, Ocon 12th, Gasly 13th, Magnussen 14th, Albon 15th, Tsunoda 16th, Ricciardo 17th, Bottas 18th, Sargent 19th, and Zhou Guan Yu in 20th. But yeah, there you go, guys. Qualifying is over. And let me now ask you guys, who do you think your driver of the day is? As yeah, it looks like a dystopian scene outside of the pit, outside of the garages. It looks horrendous. Yeah, let me just ask you guys, who do you think is driver of the day for qualifying in Brazil? And your options for driver of the day will be Max Verstappen, Lance Stroll. I've got to put in there because, you know, third. I'll put Leclerc in there. And fuck it, I'll put Fernando Alonso in there as well. Driver of the day has to be Lance Stroll, but yeah, bit of a fucked ending there to qualifying, which was a shame. But yeah, that's qualifying. That's your starting grid. Not as exciting a starting grid as I hoped we could have had, but given we've got Sainz a bit lower down, Perez lower down, Piastri lower down, Aston Martin away out of position, I think we are in for definitely an interesting Grand Prix on Sunday. Hopefully exciting to a certain extent. I think what I'm going to do, guys, is probably stick around for another 10 to 15 minutes and read out some of your comments in reaction to what's happened here in qualifying, as the rain is absolutely lashing down now. Well, if the FIA race control, if they had not delayed the session by 15 minutes, we would have actually got qualifying in before that rain, the full session. So, yeah, maybe they could have done that a bit sooner. Vince is saying the setups from today might not be the best settings for the weekend if weather improves. Weather is going to improve. For tomorrow and Sunday, it's going to be bone dry. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Yeah, people saying Stroll driver of the day. McLaren from race putting Stroll driver of the day and then a tennis racket / ball emoji. They regards as driver of the day, the FIA. While Sagan says Aston Martin second row lockout. Haha, who would have thought that was possible? Well, I came into the session saying I think legitimately they might end up as one of the worst teams this weekend in qualifying, and third and fourth on the grid. So, yeah, it just shows how much I know, doesn't it? I did get a few positions right in terms of my predictions. Hamilton, Russell, and Norris got all those positions correct. Yeah, the major ones I was wrong on was Williams not being in the top 10, Haas not being in the top 10, Ferrari not being on pole, and Aston Martin having 2 cars into Q3 and obviously being so far up. But at the end of the day, those are just predictions based on my educated guess. I don't want to be, you know, totally correct all of the time, or, you know, mostly correct all of the time, because that would be pretty boring. McLaren from races, Max 30-second win. I don't think it'll be that much. I don't think it'll be win by that much. Regara says Russell might get a penalty, so it ain't right yet. Carl says you jinxed their bad luck / performance. Josh saying Aston Martin's a roller coaster. Yeah, just incredible. Go Cole, is it, in the chat, asking who is your driver of the day? It has to be Lance Stroll. Even though, yeah, that was a bit of a messed up ending to the session, it has to be Lance Stroll. third, because, I mean, nobody expected that. And credit to Stroll, because he was, for most of qualifying, faster than Fernando Alonso. So, yeah. Some other comments here if I can. Well, F1 Gaming earlier saying I said Aston Martin aren't that bad and I was right. Well, I think he might have said that last weekend, and then, yeah, they turned out to be as bad as possible. I'm not going to read that comment out from McLaren. Let's have a great Sunday, yeah. Fingers crossed we can get at least a good competitive fight all the way through the field, but I do fear that Max Verstappen is going to win the race very comfortably on Sunday, now that he's secured pole position. Lance Stroll and the FIA share it. Yeah, maybe. I think, though, how many votes have we had in the poll? I'll wait another minute or so to see the more votes in the poll, and then I'll come to the end of the stream here because, yeah, we are pretty much done for qualifying. Which drivers are under investigation? Asks Kahima. Russell, Stroll, Gasly, Ocon. I think that's it. But looking at the incidents, I don't think any of them are going to be penalised, because similar incidents to that have not been penalised this season. So, yeah. Yeah, I'll wait for about 5 more votes in the poll running in the chat, and then I'll read out the results quickly. Verstappen, Leclerc, and Stroll desperately trying to stay indoors, because outdoors it is basically pitch black. But yeah, that I've never seen clouds as dark as that. It was literally nighttime darkness. The thing is, this when Q3 took place, it's only what, 3:45, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not like it's really late in the day. It's, middle of the afternoon. So that just shows you how terrifying that cloud was. Almost like an eclipse. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. Vinster says, hoping there's more for tomorrow. Sure, wish they could make changes after tomorrow. True. Would be a good thing. And Lawrence Stroll finally happy after a long time. Yeah, trust me, he'll be going around saying, "Oh, look what my son's done. Proved you all wrong." As Henkem saying, Norris Sunday P3, Hamilton P2, Verstappen P1. It'll be quite something for Hamilton and Norris, I think, to do that, because, I mean, you've got Leclerc up there, and the good thing for Leclerc is the 2 Aston Martins are there to kind of block the cars behind. But anyway, let me finish up this poll in the live chat. 37 votes. I asked you guys, who do you think is driver of the day for qualifying in Brazil? And you guys actually voted for Max Verstappen instead, with 48% of the vote. Lance Stroll second, 35%, and then Leclerc and Alonso level on 8%. Thank you guys for voting in that poll. Thank you guys for coming along to this qualifying watch along on a Friday. Thankfully, the last time we'll be having qualifying on a Friday. Quick reminder, this is the next 2 live streams on the channel. I'll be live tomorrow at 5 p.m. UK time for the sprint race watch along. We'll be doing an hour and a half build up, then watching along the sprint race, and then doing a reaction. And then on Sunday, we'll be live 2 hours before lights out at 3 p.m. UK time for the race preview and race watch along. And then live on Monday, of course, for a review of all the madness of this weekend and the couple weekends before in this triple header. So thank you guys for coming along to this qualifying watch along again. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up to date truly with what is going on in Formula 1. If you haven't already, make sure to smash a like button before you go. It does help the channel a lot in the algorithm. And as well, if you want to keep up to date with content on the channel, make sure to follow me on Twitter. ChazzaHD is on Twitter, or at Chaz HD1, I think, is it, or HD5? I can't remember exactly what it is. But yeah, if you type in on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, ChazzaHD, it should come up. And then you can follow me over there to keep up to date with what I'm doing. And also, we have the Discord server. Link below in the description for that. That's another great place to keep up to date with when I go live, when I upload videos, and when I do content updates to let you guys know when I'm doing certain bits of content. But that's it for qualifying, guys. Until sprint race day tomorrow. And I'll be back here live 5 PM UK time tomorrow. For that, it's been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.